thank you all for being here. I know it's a funky time and it's a Friday night, so people probably are, wanting to do other things. But if you're here, thank you. I'm really excited and grateful for this special event and party celebrating the Equal Rights Amendment, aka the ERA. So after 100 years of women's hard work, strangely, so many women don't even know what the ERA is and don't know that it hasn't passed. And, as a result, they can't really fathom the implications of where we are as women under the US law. And, I only learned about the ERA earlier this year, and I was shocked to hear that women are still not formally recognized under the US Constitution. Since I did learn, I felt a duty to honor the women who came before us and worked so hard to bring what the Equal Rights Amendment would do for us. Everyone comes to the ERA for different reasons, but the bottom line is women are way past overdue formal recognition. And like Wendy Murphy, one of our speakers later says, the question is not what rights do men have that women don't have. The real question is, are women entitled to full protection under the law? Are women explicitly entitled to equal protection under the US Constitution? And the answer is no, and that's really the problem. So today we have a special program with very important and insightful speakers. I've split up the program into 4 different segments just to keep things a little bit organized. One will be speaking with Coloradans who are, standing behind women, supporting the ERA. 2, we'll be talking about suppression, democracy, and women's rights. 3, we'll have somewhat of 2 case studies along with 2 legal advisors who will be talking about, how the Equal Rights Amendment could have possibly helped 2 stories have different outcomes. Not even outcomes, but circumstances. And then 4, we'll talk to 4 active ERA groups that are working to finish the job. And not hate, that's not a good word, but finish the job has become like a Biden thing. So I kind of felt like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not promoting Biden right now, obviously. I mean, I can't even. But anyway, moving along. So if you are watching right now, please take a minute to either retweet this if you're on Twitter, or share it if you're on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook. We ran into an issue on Twitter/X where they're kind of limiting our reach. And so as a result, a few of us are not able to stream on Twitter. I can't even stream this event, and I put it together. So that was kind of frustrating. So please, we need all the help circulating this to spread this important information. And thank you for that. So before we get on to the speakers, I want to bring on Kelly. Kelly, you want to come up really quick? She's my co-pilot. She's helped me put some of this together, and she's also streaming it directly on her Twitter. So she's an awesome person. Go find her at Kelly's Words, and you can introduce yourself if you want really quick. Without further ado, if you want to bring up Nathalia,
okay.
Senator Cutter, and Dave Gardner, we'll start with them, and they are all Coloradans.
Okay. All right. Hey, and I think Natalia, it says devices. Oh, here she comes. I think there she is. Okay. So, Kat, do you want me to stay on, or should I?
No, you can go off. I mean, unless you want to. I mean,
I'll hang out right here. If you need me, let me know.
Okay. Bye. Thank you. Hey, y'all. So nice to see your faces. First off, I'm really grateful that you all came on. So this is kind of like the Colorado segment of this program. We're all Coloradans. Dave Gardner, Nathalia, we're all in Colorado Springs. And then where are you, Senator Cutter?
I'm in Jefferson County, Southwest Jeffco.
Okay, so Senator Cutter has a bit of a schedule crunch, so we're going to start with her and then, go along. But it's really an honor for you to be on here, Senator Cutter. I had just learned about you like a month and a half ago because I saw that you had championed some legislation around like plastics and like forever chemicals. And that was amazing to me because that's stuff that I care about. And I literally see no one in our state or even our country really doing a lot around this. So I was just amazed. And then when I saw that you're also a supporter of the ERA, I was like, oh my God, this is probably our best senator in the state. So thank you for being on. So I wanted to ask you when did you first learn about the ERA and what drew you to it and what made you interested in, being involved with it?
I've known about the ERA forever. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And so that's always just been in the back of my mind and, wondering why it was still a conversation and why it just wasn't a thing. And then when I became a legislator, I was still, actually, I worked on the Women's March and I was asking questions about it then. And we were talking about it, some of the organizers, because, we were activists and wanted to do good things for women. And then the conversation carried over to when I was a legislator and the ERA Coalition asked if I would run a resolution.
Okay, so what do you mean by a resolution?
So it's not like a bill, so it doesn't do any, it doesn't enact a law or anything specific like that, but it's a formal procedure we can do at the legislature to just signal our intentions about something, I guess is a good way to describe it. So we ran the last 2 years, I've sponsored a resolution to adopt the ERA.
Okay, so you're talking about obviously on the federal scale, right?
Yes, exactly. Urging our federal, urging that it's adopted.
Okay, so how did your colleagues respond to that in the Colorado State Legislature?
And you could probably imagine.
Well, it's surprising. I mean, it's so simple. I think the ERA is so fundamentally simple, and it should be a nonpartisan issue as well. But
exactly, it should be, and that's what one would think. But it was, of course, supported by the Dems. I'm not sure any Republicans. I couldn't tell you that 100%, but I'm not sure any Republicans voted for it. And I do know that some of the Republican women in the Senate were upset, which, I regret because we didn't include them in it, but it included discussion about abortion and about equal pay. And those are things that they had not been supportive of. And so particularly abortion, and gay rights. So, LGBTQA rights. And so we felt like that was important language to include in our resolution, and our colleagues weren't comfortable supporting that, which is.
So you're still working with the ERA Coalition, right?
Yeah, I haven't talked to them in a little bit, but I need to re-engage because we've done a few projects to advocate for the ERA nationally together.
So what makes the ERA important? So I recently just read a comprehensive history of the fight for equality by one of our other speakers, actually, Wendy Murphy. And it's so interesting because the ERA was basically the women's thing up until basically the 70s or something, when Roe versus Wade kind of became, happened. Right. And Roe versus Wade is important, but I feel like we're missing out on the fundamental first step of actually recognizing women, And so I feel like the ERA has kind of been totally eclipsed by, reproductive rights. And, I'm not like an anti-reproductive rights person, but I just feel like we're missing the first step, And so I find it so surprising that not enough people are still, it's kind of like the fight for the ERA has kind of died down. What do you think we can do to kind of reinvigorate and re-inspire people to, to recognize the importance of the ERA? I mean, this is 100 years of work kind of just going down the hole, basically.
No, I agree completely. And that with the ERA Coalition, we'd done a few actions. They had drafted a letter to President Biden urging him to instruct the archivist to publish the ERA, which I understand that's really all that needs to be done at this point legally. And so we sent it out to all other state legislators and got sign-ons. And we also did a virtual national press conference. So I think with legislators from all over the country that support the ERA. But I think that just continuing to raise awareness and continuing to have the conversations. But I also think that there's kind of a little time pressure right now. Like there's a window that we have before Biden leaves office. I think it'd be great if we could really turn up the heat and ask him to leave us this legacy, to really, solidify his commitment and demonstrate his commitment to women and equality by just simply asking the archivist to publish the document.
Okay, thank you. So Dave and Nathalia, Senator Cutter was kind of interested to just kind of meet the other Coloradans. We actually have two other Coloradans, but they're going to be on a different segment. But if you both want to just introduce yourselves and tell us what you do, and then I'll ask both of you questions. And Senator Cutter, when you need to get off, go ahead. But this segment will end at 4:30. So if you want to
Thank you. I'll have to hop early, but thank you. I want to hang out and meet, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with y'all.
Yeah, okay. So, Nathalia, why don't you start? Introduce yourself to us and to Senator Cutter.
Yeah, so my name is Nathalia. I started the Red Clover Coalition very recently, actually, in June. And that kind of was based off of something that I saw on TikTok, where this girl was just kind of calling for organizers in different cities to put together like marches and protests just in support of reproductive rights on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. So we kind of started with that, and the little group that I got together, in organizing that, we kind of became really like passionate about just women's rights in general, bodily autonomy, and just like equal rights just for everybody, really. So we're now working, hopefully working towards trying to work with, people that are in government, like senators and all of that good stuff, and trying to, in the long run, make some good changes that will be beneficial, not only for women, but, like the LGBT community and just people that don't really have the opportunities that you would think they should have as like, normal human rights. So yeah, we're just starting out, but hopefully we'll help make some changes in the long run.
Go ahead, Dave. Introduce yourself.
Well, great. Hi, I'm Dave Gardner, and a fairly new fan of Katrina and of this important work that she's doing. So thanks for allowing me to be here, mainly to honor this work. I met Katrina, the main way I met Katrina is that I have been running for president for the last 11 months. And it's because I feel an important need to set up some model policy goals, the three most essential public policy goals in order to leave our kids a bright future instead of a dead planet, are to go on an energy diet and to curb our overconsumption, and that means to embrace economic contraction and to also embrace population contraction voluntarily and ethically. And of course, as we know, that's kind of a dead-end platform for anyone trying to get elected right now. I'm really trying to change that. Interestingly, as part of my introduction, next week I'm going to be choosing a running mate, and we're doing a ranked choice voting demonstration to allow the people to vote. And Katrina is one of our applicants, and in fact, the three frontrunners, the three main applicants, are all women, and I am so glad for that because, men unfortunately have been running the world for a long time, and we've really done a really poor job. And I really value the perspective of women and the cooperative, collaborative nature that they generally bring to things. We need a lot more of that and a lot less competition. And in fact, I would turn my campaign over to someone younger and with less testosterone in a heartbeat.
All right. Well, thank you. So, did you want to say anything before you run off, Senator?
Well, again, just thank you so much for having me. And I'm eager to connect with my fellow Coloradans who are working on this. I think we've got some, we need to keep pushing, and love all the energy. And Kat, thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and we will definitely have to connect more.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to miss the rest. Take care.
Yeah. All right. So Dave, well, I guess we can just have a little conversation here, but Dave, did you want to say any support for the ERA? I know you're relatively new to the ERA. Well, I don't know. did you know about the ERA before?
Well, I had forgotten whatever I had known, and I want to thank you for, bringing it back to my attention. I'd completely forgotten that it had gotten just dead-ended, and
Steamrolled.
that's, yeah, shocking. And so I applaud what you're doing and honor what you're doing. And when I'm no longer running for president, I would like to lend more manual labor to the effort for sure.
Okay. All right. So, Natalia, so how do you feel about the ERA? I mean, I basically introduced it to you when you were doing your women's protest, and you were like, I had no idea this was even, important for this, our efforts, basically.
Yeah.
Did you have time to really look into it at all, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I've done a lot more research since then on it, because I do feel like it is, like you said, kind of like a groundwork that is needed before we can make any other real changes that are going to stick long term. So I do definitely feel like it's something that I know I myself and the women in my coalition, we are definitely in support of it and want to do whatever we can to help people become more educated and informed on it, because
Okay.
also, like you said, a lot of people don't even really know about it. And I've kind of run into that with the more research I do and the more I talk about it with other people, and they're like, oh, like what? I didn't even know that was a thing, kind of how I was. So yeah, I think just the education kind of needs to be pushed so that people can inform themselves and we can help them find, the right resources to inform themselves and make it happen.
Yeah, so later on in this program, we'll be speaking to like 3 or 4 active ERA groups, and I'll ask them, what can we do to inform, like women's coalitions like yours? Like, how can we give you tools to help further the efforts, because it's kind of like, it's kind of a scattered movement from what I have seen. It's like these different ERA groups, I feel like they're trying to kind of coordinate, but in my perspective, there's not enough concerted energy. It's like I said, it's like back in some time, maybe it was in the 70s or 80s, it started just kind of dying down, I think. And it's so unfortunate because where they got with it, that took a lot of work. I can't remember there was like a video I played at the beginning. It was horrible, but I mean the tech aspect of it. But I can't remember how many Congress sessions it took, but it took literally from 1920, I think, up until the 70s or something to actually get it passed, So this is hard work women did. And it's like, we can't just let it go. We can't just let it fade away. But so Dave, did you want to say anything else about, anything in regards to the ERA, or have you any questions or anything?
Just 1 or 2 quick comments about it. I'm pretty confident that J.D. Vance isn't going to be the next vice president of the United States, but even just the possibility of that, I think, makes it just that much more critical that this ERA work happen. We do not need a future that's like The Handmaid's Tale. We really do need to codify in every way possible that women are equal. That's one thing. And the second thing is a little bit unrelated, but this may be the last time I get a chance to say anything, is that if anybody on this call wants to vote for Katrina to be the People's Choice running mate for Dave Gardner in our little ranked choice voting demonstration, go to DaveThePlanet2024.com next week and click on updates, and there'll be a page that'll direct you to where the ballot is. And I know Katrina will have a lot of supporters.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I forgot to even introduce myself on this. Everyone on this stream knows who I am, but there might be people out there who don't know who I am. So I'll introduce myself now. So my name is Katrina. I'm an activist and a writer. I'm a former independent U.S. House candidate. I had to drop out due to some life emergencies. And so when I dropped out, I decided to run as Dave Gardner's vice president. So that's what this is all about. But anyway, so Are there any last words for this little Colorado segment? And if you have to go after this, that's totally fine. But if you want to stay and hear some of the other speakers and potentially interact with them, you can as well. But the other segments will have kind of a topic. So we might not have a lot of interaction. But yeah, if there are any last words, if you want to plug your websites or any other promotion, self-promotion, that's totally fine. Or any final words for this this program? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
Nothing? Well, okay, so
I
so
got
why
a
don't
thing
you?
real quick, actually. Sorry.
Okay.
I just remembered. I found out right before this. We will be having. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this yet, Katrina, but we will be having another March/protest rally on October 4th this year. So right before the elections. We would love to have Katrina come back again and speak about the ERA. We really want to like sign people up for, like encourage people to vote, I guess would be one of our main goals. But yeah, the ERA is something we definitely want to push also during that march and protest. So October 4th, Colorado Springs. We've got our Facebook and Instagram pages, which are just under Red Clover Coalition. So you can follow us there for any updates on that.
Okay, awesome, Nathalia. And Dave Gardner, do you want to plug your website again?
I will, any chance I get, DaveThePlanet2024.com, and I've got a great podcast, Dave the Planet. Just did a good episode about Earth Overshoot Day, which was yesterday. And I do want to say, Katrina, I think, had kind of forgotten about the voting next week. I promise you, she did not invite me to be here just to plug her and the People's Choice voting next week. I'm sure of that.
Thank you. Okay, well, so I'm going to wrap up this segment. Like I said, if you want to stay on and hear some of the other speakers, you're more than welcome, or you can hop off and then watch it on YouTube. Otherwise, thank you so much. It's so great to see both your faces. Honestly, the last time I saw both of you, I think was literally in the same 2-week span, like about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, right? So I know a lot has happened since then, and it's great to see you both. You look great, and I will see you around. If I don't see you sometime soon, I'll see you on October 4th. Mm-hmm. So thank you. And then Kelly, if you want to bring up Alex, he's going to share his support of the ERA. Hey, Alex.
How you doing?
Good. So here's another Colorado Springs guy, and he's going to share his support of the ERA, and then we'll move on to our next segment. Go ahead, Alex.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, my name's Alex, and I live in Colorado Springs. I fully support passing the ERA. It's 100% the right thing to do and would actually affirm the value we claim to have as Americans, equality. It's not only the right thing to do just on its face, but and abiding by our virtues, but also how much good it will do in the future on policy and politics, in my opinion. Sadly, I was a part of the 73% of Americans that assumed we already had just like a framework in place to some extent for equal rights, no matter one's sex. But now I'm a part of the 78% of Americans that think we should have that in place, knowing that we don't. As someone who fights for abortion rights, especially here in Colorado Springs, where I pass the Planned Parenthood constantly, the one where the Robert Deere shooting happened, I think it's of incredible importance to have something like the ERA to give women equal rights in healthcare, to hear that Roe v. Wade would potentially not even be needed anymore. That far-right Republicans would have less power to argue for their small majority to keep stomping on the freedoms and rights of all women. And even when, and that's not if, but when they try to challenge it legally, they will not have the standing to, nor will they have the standing politically, culturally, more so than they already don't. So when they do, when our legal precedent ignoring Supreme Court just like when our legal precedent ignoring Supreme Court did actually listen to the challenge and chose to strike down Roe v. Wade, I definitely will highly anticipate the unconstitutional pretzels they will have to twist themselves into to try and side with unconstitutionality. And I'll highly anticipate all the remaining women within their majority side of the political spectrum's voting bloc that they will lose, just utterly disrespecting and them and our Constitution to their faces. And so I say all this, this all stands for more than just Roe v. Wade, but just all the legal implications that this could then have on equal pay, potentially on menstruation products. There's so much more. So yeah, fully support passing the ERA and all it can bring to substantively better the lives of all American women. And just because by principle, it's the right thing to do. So yeah, fully support it. And I'm glad to be here with Katrina for sure. Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Natalia. So now we're going to turn to our next segment, which is titled Suppression, Democracy, and Women's Rights. And Kelly, if you want to bring up Marianne Williamson, Wendy Murphy, and Nicole Bates, that's who will be on this. Hey, Marianne Williamson, how are you?
Nice to see you again. Hey, Nicole. Hi, darling. Hi.
Hey.
And Wendy.
Oh, Marianne.
We're all together. Hi.
Yeah, it's so great to see you all. Thank you. Yeah, Nicole really wanted to be added to this segment, and when I told her she could, she added like 6 exclamation marks. So I knew she was really, really excited. So thank you all for being here. I wanted to talk about this interesting topic that I think all 3 of you can really speak to, and it's really the concept of, it's not even a concept, but the reality of suppression within our supposed democracy, and then how that ties into women's rights, or even, so, Marianne was a candidate for president several cycles, and, she had experienced some suppression and some kind of, I guess, a funky style of democracy. And I feel like the ERA has experienced that same thing, where it's like rules change at the last minute, things are silenced, so this is a really open-ended discussion. I'm not really here to navigate in any way, because you're all the experts. So if you just want to give like a brief introduction, I think everyone knows well, go ahead and introduce all of yourselves, and then we'll just start the conversation and we'll just see where it takes us. So Marianne, you go ahead and start, Wendy, and then Nicole to introduce yourselves.
Well, what I've learned about the ERA has come from both Wendy and Nicole. So when it comes to the externalities of the issue, they are the experts here. They are the scholars, and they are the ones who know what's happening and what needs to happen. But I've seen that you can't legislate away misogyny. You could have a constitutional amendment that abolished slavery, but that didn't abolish racism. And we can have an external constitutional amendment in this case to abolish the legal externalities of misogyny. And that's why we're all here, because we want to support that. But I've also seen that in this issue, as with race, as with so many things, there are internal changes that are necessary too. This is why Martin Luther King said we need quantitative shifts in our circumstances and qualitative changes in our souls. And what I saw as a political candidate, which is particularly striking, because I had never experienced this before in my career, and I'm not a young woman. I've been out there for decades. And I never experienced in my career as an author, teacher, inspirational speaker, various things I've done, nonprofit activist. I never felt that my being a woman in any way twisted anyone's perception of me or limited my opportunities. Running for office, I couldn't even believe it. The things that will be said about you, and I have to say, because I think this is so important, and this includes by other women, and this includes by women who consider themselves feminists, there is so much internalized misogyny. And so the way the media operates, the way the political system operates, things that I knew I was at the effect of, which absolutely would not have occurred, I don't think, if I were a man. So it has given me insight into why the ERA hasn't passed. Because I've seen the dismissiveness towards women. And if you're dismissive towards women, you're dismissive towards women's rights. This casual dismissiveness towards a woman's pain, this casual dismissiveness towards a woman's inequality on any level. So it has certainly made me more and more committed, even more committed to whether it's Nicole or Wendy or any of the people who are leading the charge on the political level. It's made me even more committed, as a follower of that, but also wanting to, in any way I can, help bring it to light and talk about it in whatever way I can contribute, because I see how, it's that whole thing that Ann Richards said many years ago at the Democratic convention when George Bush was a Republican. And she said, and she talked about the fact that Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in high heels. I've really seen how on every level in our society, a woman just has to, and it doesn't even matter if she's better. I have to tell you something. If she's better, she's even more derided. If she's better, she's even more suspected. There is an almost witch burning there. And it's the archetype of the witch, like I said, you can abolish slavery, but racism just burrowed in. And I used to joke in my career that they don't burn witches anymore. They just change the consonant from she's a bitch, she's a witch to she's a bitch. So there are a lot of many layers of resistance that we have to move through here. And I appreciate that this conversation among you, all of you, has space for the recognition of those psychological and emotional changes that have to occur, as well as the political ones. So we have to do a big both and here, but we'll get there.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. It's like we have to do it. We have to attack it from every single level, So jump in, anyone, Wendy or Nicole. I guess Wendy, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge and thank and celebrate Marianne Williamson for, number one, being here again, being humble enough to say, I just didn't understand and I was willing to listen, because it was her willingness as a person who respects what democracy ought to be. It was her willingness to listen to the people that brought her to the conversation that Nicole and I have since had many, many times with her, all around increasing understanding and awareness, and then asking the next question: what can we do to make this change happen? Marianne was the first presidential candidate to say, if elected, I will put the ERA in the Constitution. And others followed her, which is terrific, but it's a woman's leadership being the first one to do it that provoked other people to do it. And I just think she deserves to be recognized for that. And I will always respect her and what she stands for ideologically because of that. And I want to tie what I just said then to part of your first question, Katrina, which is what's going on with our country in the sense that we have this stranglehold from a duopoly that is making it impossible for democracy to matter, for making it impossible for people who have extremely serious concerns to not just be heard, but to elevate those concerns to a place where they have space in the political conversation, especially on the eve of such an important election. I don't think the public understands, and it ought to, that some issues are intentionally being kept out of the political debate, no matter how important they are. And the ERA is one of those issues. Both parties have always opposed women's equality, always. And that doesn't mean they admit it, because the Democrats always say they support women's equality and the Republicans generally say they don't, which creates this us versus them, again, duopoly, where we're forced to choose. And it sort of seems natural that women should choose to vote blue, because the Republicans are openly hostile to women's equality. The Democrats say they support it. Let's vote blue. Same with abortion. Republicans seem opposed. Democrats seem supportive. Let's vote blue. Well, the reality is very different from the narrative. And I can say that as an attorney specializing in women's rights, constitutionally speaking, and having been in this business for more than 35 years, being an advocate and an academic and a teacher and an impact litigator. So I've been in the academy and I've been in the trenches. And what I can tell you is that at every turn, when I had an opportunity to get the Democrats on the side of the Equal Rights Amendment, they fought against me. They fought against me in lawsuits. They openly blocked the Equal Rights Amendment once it became ratified by the last necessary state in January 2020. And they propped up abortion as the proxy issue that women are supposed to care for, and told me as a woman, this is what I'm supposed to vote about, even though I was saying back to them, I'm not worried about abortion. I'm worried about equality, which, by the way, would fix abortion. So let's do equality, which will fix the abortion problem and reinstate Roe versus Wade. So let's not talk about abortion. I'm concerned about the moral imperative, which is that women are being raped, beaten, and killed at very high rates in this country because they do not have equal protection of the laws, including the laws that are supposed to prevent rapes, beatings, and homicides. And by the way, those very laws that women are not entitled to equal protection of include abortion. So I want to be clear about this, that when I say to Democrats, only 2% of women need an abortion in any given year. 100% of women need equality 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every minute of every day of their lives, and they're dying without it. Stop telling me about abortion. Dead women don't need abortions. When I say things like that, brick walls, silence, the door gets shut, because abortion isn't actually the issue. Abortion is the distraction. Every time women fight for equality, abortion gets propped up as a distraction. And it's not just a distraction of our political attention. It's a distraction of our resources. Resources is how we get the world to change. We have to spend resources. Well, that happened in 1973. Women were fighting for the ERA. It had just passed Congress. It needed to now be ratified by 38 states. It was sent to the states for ratification in 72. What happened in 73? The Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade. And all of a sudden, all the women who had been fighting for the ERA started fighting about abortion. Why? Because it was a brand new doctrine. It now had to be litigated in the states, and all the money started going to abortion litigation. That's exactly what happened in the past couple of years leading up to this presidential campaign. We were fighting for the ERA. We finally got the last state to ratify in January of 2020. And what happened? All of a sudden, Roe versus Wade gets overturned. And all the money we were spending, all the energy we were spending trying to get the government to recognize the validity of the ERA, because we finally got 38 states to ratify in 2020, all of a sudden, again, we're sidetracked and being forced to talk about abortion rather than equality, even though equality fixes abortion. This is not an accident. This is a strategy. It's not a conspiracy. It's a strategy. And it's a strategy by both parties to stop women from, number one, uniting across party lines, across racial lines, across ethnic lines, across economic lines. If women united, we would have 170 million votes. We would control the politics in this country. So the duopoly needs to keep us divided into little chunks to make damn sure we don't do that. That's why the ERA matters as much as it does. It's not just that it gives us baseline equality, which is to say all laws would have to be applied equally to women. Without the ERA, they don't. And I'm talking about everything from getting a dog license to freedom of speech and even laws against slavery. They don't have to be applied equally to women without the Equal Rights Amendment. That's how bad this is. Again, as Katrina said, the question is not what rights do men have that women do not have. It's what rights must, as a constitutional matter, be applied equally to women. The answer is none of them. Women are not entitled to equal treatment under any laws, any of them, period. And an uncertain guarantee of equal treatment under the law is no guarantee at all. And that is the enslaved status of women. And it's been the enslaved status of women since before this country began. So I think what I would like to focus on tonight is how do we break through the duopoly and convince women to stop being dumb lemmings? I'm going to vote red, I'm going to vote blue, and stop getting sucked into these false narratives about why it's better to vote blue than red. Oh, you can't not vote blue because then Trump might win. Well, you know, if Trump wins because some women don't vote blue because they're angry that the Democrats are currently blocking the Equal Rights Amendment the same way Trump did, if Kamala Harris loses in November because she and Biden are currently denying 170 million women basic legal equality in this country the same way Trump did, that's on Kamala Harris and the Democrats. That's not on women. We don't apologize for that. We stand up for the basic human right to equal treatment under all laws and at the hands of all government officials, state and federal, all branches, legislative, executive, and judicial, and the courts, where women are not currently entitled to equal treatment, period. We stand up for the basic human right to be treated as an equal human being and not a slave, or we deserve our second-class citizenship by voting blue. You vote blue and you get a person who's currently denying you basic legal equality, you're an idiot. Don't vote blue. Don't vote red. Vote for Marianne.
Well, Marianne's assistant made it clear to me that Marianne is no longer a candidate. She wanted me to say that, so we can't vote for Marianne. But
I didn't ask that you say that, but I'm not. I don't know I didn't ask that you say that, but I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we can team up with her and, you know, hopefully help her in the future, you know,
Yeah,
actually.
thank you.
I don't know.
Well, can I,
But Nicole, if you, you want to say
I
what?
would vote for Marianne if she didn't want my vote anyway, but the other person I vote for, and I do this every election, dog catcher to president, I vote for Alice Paul because she was the leader of the National Women's Party. She was fiercely nonpartisan. She obeyed nobody based on color. She said, I don't care if you're red or blue. I don't care who you are and what else you promise me. You don't tell me why I should vote for you. I'll tell you what I want in exchange for my vote. She was fierce. She was amazing. She was brilliant. And she, when she formed the National Women's Party, said, I don't care what party you are. If you don't support women's suffrage, we will make sure you don't win. So I vote for Alice Paul, even though she's been dead for 50 years. I write her name in and I write a little script along the side of my ballot explaining why I'm voting for Alice Paul, even though she's dead. And I talk about democracy. I'm not giving my vote away. Ever.
Good for you. Thank you, Wendy. What do you have to add to this conversation, Nicole? And Wendy, you didn't really explicitly introduce yourself, but she is why don't you do a brief introduction? You did mention that you're a constitutional.
I'm an attorney, academic activist. You know, I wear kind of a lot of different hats. I've been teaching an advanced feminist legal studies, feminist critical legal studies seminar on sexual violence and law reform, in which class I always teach my students about the fact that rape law doesn't prevent rape because it's not equally enforced on behalf of women. But I've been teaching for 23 years at New England Law Boston, where I also run the Women's and Children's Advocacy Project. And I've been doing impact litigation on behalf of women's civil rights, Title IX, you know, you name it, if it affects women's civil rights or constitutional rights. I've been doing work in the courts on behalf of women for more than 35 years. I do have a new book coming out in September called Oh No, He Didn't, subtitle Brilliant Women and the Men Who Took Credit for Their Work. Cheap plug.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Nicole, you introduce yourself and then, just chime in with whatever thoughts you have on this discussion.
Thanks, Katrina, and thanks for having me. I am Nicole Verassi Bates. I'm the founder and executive director of Shattering Glass, which is a nonpartisan, and I want to emphasize that, nonprofit dedicated to gender equity. And we're not going to attain gender equality without constitutional equality. But first and foremost, I want to echo Wendy's sentiments, and that's why I wanted to be on this particular panel so I could personally thank Marianne for all that she has done, the courage to be the first person to come out and say she would publish the Equal Rights Amendment, the fight She waged through her campaign on not just equality, all the issues that she was fighting for, and staying in as long as she did. Marianne, I will be forever grateful to you for all that you've done. I also wanted to be on this panel to have Wendy's back, because oftentimes when we talk about how the Democratic Party is as equally against women as the Republican Party, people look at you like you have three heads, you're slightly unhinged. That is simply not the case. I was one of those people. I just assumed it was getting to the right people in the White House. Now that we have a fully ratified Equal Rights Amendment, Donald Trump was out of office. Sure, Joe Biden was going to do it right away. But then he fought against the Equal Rights Amendment, and we still don't have a ruling. There have been 5 lawsuits, 4 of which have been brought by Wendy, that have been dismissed on procedural grounds. The ERA is the only amendment that has reached the constitutional threshold for ratification that wasn't published as, an amendment to the Constitution. All of the preceding amendments did when they reached the number of ratifications. And those amendments had challenges too. So it is really baffling. But getting to the point that Wendy made about, women acting and voting against their own interests, that is very, very real. And most recently, that was highlighted again. It was even yesterday in a conversation with a bunch of ERA activists who understand that the Biden-Harris administration has fought against the ERA, the ratified ERA. There will be challenges after the ERA is published. Publication only gives you a presumption of validity. It doesn't determine validity, but it will be on the opponents of equality the way it was before Donald Trump blocked it, when he had already a conservative majority at the court. But these women yesterday were all giddy over the fact that Kamala Harris said in 2019, when she debated Joe Biden, that she was for the ERA, and that in Marie Claire article, she said the ERA passing the ERA was a priority of her first 100 days. Well, fast forward to today, there were 4 intervening years, and maybe it was because she was the number 2 and didn't have a policy control over the policy. But efforts to reach out to her during that period were rebuffed. And earlier this week, I actually wrote to the vice president's team, and I'm awaiting a response on where this stands. And as somebody ideally noted, it would be perfect if the president published it right now. We can't assume that because she's a woman and because she said something in 2019, that's still the case. So I asked these women to actually find out the vice president's position on this issue. We can't just be blind to what has occurred over the past 4 years. And it really has been gaslighting. And I know I say this, Marianne, all the time. It is gaslighting because, as Wendy pointed out, the Equal Rights Amendment protects reproductive rights. That's one of the reasons why the Trump administration blocked it, to overturn Roe versus Wade. But more importantly, as Wendy said, is to wage war on women. If you look at Project 2025 that everybody's talking about right now, oh no, we're going to have Project 2025. The Project 2025 has been around forever. It's just the current version of the conservative agenda, a well-funded conservative mission to stack the courts and to wage war on women and some other things. But the Equal Rights Amendment stops Project 2025, most of it, things like no-fault divorces, in its tracks. That's why they needed to block it. All of this would be stopped with the Equal Rights Amendment. So it really makes no sense that it hasn't been published. The only thing you can deduce is that the Democratic Party is refusing to publish the Equal Rights Amendment to keep the Project 2025 issue, abortion issue, IVF issue, an issue. So women are beholden to them as the lesser of two evils. And that's a real problem if women blindly follow and vote against their own interests. We have political power, but we need to use it.
100%. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think we do have to acknowledge that while Kamala Harris is vice president, certainly until this day when she is literally the candidate, the nominee, she has been the vice president, which means her job is to support the agenda of the president. So we have to, recognize that. I mean, she's doing her job. The issue is now. Now, somebody says in the comments, no one's asked her about it. Wendy had suggested a tweet from me. I certainly put it out there asking her about it. And I would say to all the women who are watching now and men that we should all be asking her. I think that something is going on here now in these months that we have left until the election in November. There's a lot of, well, I'll get by saying as little as I have to when it comes to issues. There are no issues mentioned on her website, et cetera. And I think it's very reasonable for us to ask. Now, what you were just saying, and by the way, Nicole, thank you for those very kind and generous words. Thank you. You were saying that we're being gaslit. Well, I certainly agree on that, not only on that issue, but on so many things. But then when you submitted your opinion about why you think the Democrats are, yes, Ellen, I see that you say I meant journalists, but once again, the journalists are cabal. It's a cabal. It's a political media industrial complex. They're all one team. So what journalists are going to ask them, it's very odd, except independent journalists. And the independent journalists tend to be a kind of patriarchal group out there. Very interesting. But let's go back to why Kamala or any other Democrat would not be supporting the ERA. Now, what you said, Nicole, was that you thought it was because they really want to keep these issues on the table to fundraise and so forth and make people think that they have to vote for us. You might be right. I don't know. But it has seemed to me, isn't it possible that it's more of an economic kowtowing to big business, to Chamber of Commerce types, because simply they don't want to pay women as much? I mean, that's always been my assumption, was that big business doesn't want it. Am I incorrect on that?
You're correct. You're 100% correct. It's not just big business doesn't want to pay. It's literally sex trafficking and pornography. I mean, those are gazillion-dollar a year industries. They're the number 2 lobbyist in DC. They lobby as big tech. They make so much money from women being unequally protected under laws against slavery, under laws against violence. I mean, think about this. There is pornography in this country, run-of-the-mill sort of mainstream pornography that depicts women being tortured. Torture is against the law. You cannot even consent to torture if you want to. It's illegal to consent to torture. But guess what? If the person being tortured is a woman, it's legal because the torture laws don't apply equally to women without the ERA. That's a money thing, Marianne. That is pure cash-driven motive to keep women down.
Let's slow down and really deconstruct this, because I think people watching would really want to understand this. First of all, pornography is an $11 billion a year business. Would the ERA, and one of the things you've said repeatedly here, Wendy, is about how some laws, women are not protected. Well, I think the average American would listen to that and go, wait a minute, if something's against the law, it's against the law for everyone. So how would the ERA protect women from such things as you're mentioning,
like sex trafficking? Yeah, no, it's an important, very important question.
Trafficking. Why would the ERA help with sex trafficking?
Exactly. This is the most important question you could ask, because the ERA is not a right unto itself. It is a guarantee that all laws and all government actors and actions will be enforced equally to a woman. Women will be the recipients of equal treatment.
Proactive. So it's about proactivity.
Exactly. It's about enforcement and treatment. under the laws? Are the laws being enforced equally? Are women being treated equally under the laws by government officials? Without the ERA, all laws may be enforced unequally, and all government officials may treat women differently and worse because they are female. That's allowed without the ERA. We have to understand now, how would that apply in the context of sex trafficking, for example? Well, sex trafficking is illegal under sex trafficking laws, both federal and state, in most states. And it's also illegal under the 13th Amendment, which forbids slavery, based on exactly what I just told you about the fact that all laws can be enforced differently and worse on behalf of women. Those laws, which purport to forbid slavery, purport to forbid sex trafficking, may be enforced less effectively, unequally, worse, when the person seeking redress is a female. This is the essence of where the money is coming from in those industries. If we required equal treatment of women under those laws, it would be unconstitutional to disproportionately not protect them.
So
Same is
I,
true
I hate to end this conversation, but this we're at the end of our time. But our next segment is actually about this very topic. We'll have someone who we'll have two case studies where two women, as younger women, they were exposed to extreme sexual violence and abuse, and we're going to be looking at them and having kind of case studies, like what would have happened differently if the ERA had been in place. And again, I wish we could keep going, but I kind of
No, absolutely. I will say thank you so much for letting me be here. Wendy and Nicole, are you staying on this program here?
I don't know.
Are they, Katrina?
So Wendy will be in the next segment.
Okay.
Nicole, you're welcome to stay on as long as you want. And so I'm going to have someone come on now who's going to express his support for the ERA, but he wants to talk to you. He wants to say hi. He's one of your fans, Marianne. So if you
thank
want
you.
to just stay a few minutes.
And then Wendy and Nicole, I'd like to do something later interview with you, because I have a couple of questions I really want to ask you that I think people are asking.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We'll
Sure.
plan to do it.
However, I can.
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want to
bring up
try to
Nathan,
talk?
please?
Should we plan to talk by conference call when Katrina?
Yeah,
is
I'll
done
be in
with
touch
us?
with you later,
Okay.
because Katrina said
Okay.
you're staying here. Yeah.
Okay, good. Anytime,
Thank you
Marianne.
for having us, Katrina.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And stay on just a second, Marianne. Kelly, can you bring up Nathan if he's on? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. We had an echo, so I muted. I don't see him here.
Oh, okay. Well, he must have forgotten or something. He was going to express his support for the ERA, and he's a huge Marianne fan. But we had two people who actually wanted to come on just to say hi to Marianne.
Well,
But
tell them I said hi. And thank you for
Okay.
having me on. And it's great to be with all of you. And I'll see you later.
Thank
and
you, Marianne.
much love. Let's
Thanks,
keep it up
Nicole.
until this thing gets done.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
thanks.
Bye.
Thank you so much. All right, Kelly, if you want to bring up Mary Byler and Lisa Forbes and Naomi Young. Hey, how are you? Mary, you're muted. Hey,
Hi.
Naomi. How are you? All right, so this next segment is called Law, Justice, and Violence Against Women. And this is going to be somewhat of a case study. So we're going to learn from Mary and Lisa a little bit of their background. They come from a pretty extreme childhood and upbringing. And I'm just kind of curious to learn from Wendy and Naomi their kind of feedback and their insight on, you know, if the ERA had been in place and supportive policies would have been in place, what could have gone differently in their stories, you know? So, you know, this is kind of, you know, we're just doing this naturally. So I don't know if Lisa wants to start first or Mary, but basically take, you know, 5 minutes or so to introduce yourself and kind of share a little bit about, you know, the pretty extreme experiences you had that created such the amazing activist that you are now, and then we'll take it from there. So either Mary or Lisa, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, well, my name is Lisa Forbes. I tell my story in my book, which is called I Can Take It From Here. And it's a memoir of trauma, prison, and self empowerment. I'm interested to know what people would think in terms of how the ERA would make a difference. My story is basically one of community trauma. I did hear people speaking earlier about how women themselves buy into misogyny and self-hatred. And that does play a part, I think, in community trauma, to where when a young female tries to tell people what is happening to her sexually when she's being abused, in a lot of communities, and certainly in my experience, and also in various religious settings, which are high control and highly abusive, the reaction is simply, welcome to the world, welcome to what it's like to be a woman. I think that really we need to address some of the issues, and maybe ERA would, in which women themselves have internalized this feeling of this is what it means to be a woman in the world. That is something that I think fundamentally needs to be changed. The belief that certain things are normal if you are a woman, even if those things are abusive, even if those things are devastating, even if those things are happening to you below the age of consent, that this is what it's like to be female. We need to change the culture of what it means to be a woman in America.
So Lisa, since I'm pretty much the only one I think here that knows your story, I don't know if you would be comfortable telling a little bit more about the details, like what you went through as a kid and then what happened, in your teenage years. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine, but that's kind of what I was hoping, so they could kind of understand where you're coming from.
Well, I have a history of starting at the age of 8 of daily sexual abuse at home by one of my brothers. And the interesting thing is that, talking about the trajectory of girls in the society, I was able to read fluently when I was 3. I wanted to be a chemist. I had all of these things going for me. And then I started having this really deep-seated trauma of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, religious abuse. My mother was basically in a cult where she did not believe in education. She felt that education was not needed because we were just waiting on the end of the world. And so I graduated from high school at 15, and she refused to send me to college. She got me a worker's permit, and I went to work at 15 at downtown Chicago at a full-time job as a secretary, where I met a grown man, and a few months later, I was pregnant. And a couple of years after that, at 17, I had just had a mental breakdown, and I was in his home and stabbed him, and he died. And I was charged with premeditated murder, even though there was a whole lot of history of mental illness and things that never got in front of the jury. And so I wound up doing 14 years in prison, in a maximum security prison, convicted of murder. And I write about my story in my book because it really, once I got to prison, I saw that my story was the story of so many women there, that really trauma and sexual abuse was a common theme among women who were incarcerated. That trauma and sexual abuse, some of it led to violence, outbursts. Some of it led to suicidal attempts. A lot of it led to being susceptible to prostitution and trafficking. So the common theme of allowing these women to be dehumanized, starting at the time when they were girls, and then when their mind breaks under the pressure of that abuse, criminalizing them for the way they explode. So trauma doesn't go anywhere. It's either going to implode, where you're going to have violence on yourself, addiction, suicide, attempts, cutting, things like that, or it's going to explode into violence against others. But when you don't see people as worth saving, when you don't see their experiences as recognizing that it's traumatizing, if somehow they're supposed to see these experiences as just normal, they don't get any of the help that they need. They don't get any of the trauma resolution. And so I didn't get any of that, which is what I focus on now. But my story is one of severe trauma, emotional, sexual, religious, high cultural, an almost cult-like religious experience. Really, almost any level of trauma that you can think of, I describe in detail in my book. I could take it from here to show people that when I'm talking about trauma, I'm really not talking from theory, that this is something that we are allowing. And then basically the woman who usually starts when she's a girl, winds up paying the price without any societal support for what she has gone through and what she needs to recover from.
Thank you, Lisa. That's spot on. Mary, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and your activism as well?
Sure. I want to thank you, Lisa, for that, for sharing what you shared. It's really important that we listen and hear the consequences of trauma. My name is Mary Byler. I was born and raised Amish. I lived in 5 different Amish settlements. In 2004, when I escaped, I reported the abuse that I had experienced. There were 5 people in my immediate family arrested and prosecuted. They all pled guilty. That includes my mother, my stepfather, and 3 of my brothers. Part of what happened, and this is something that I had night terrors about for many years, because just like Lisa said, when you have trauma either goes inward or outward. It comes out. It's going to come out, and sometimes it's in ways you don't want it to. But one of the things that I've had many, many night terrors about is the fact that there were 4 busloads of Amish people who showed up in court for a perpetrator of child rape, who said on court record that he had raped me close to, I guess, about 75 times. When he was interviewed by the prosecutor, he had admitted to about 200 times. My own mother wrote letters of support for him. You can actually watch part of that in Sins of the Amish, which is a 2-part docuseries that shares various experiences of Amish women, specifically Amish and plain women. You can also read my book, Reflections and Memories of an Amish Misfit. I talk about trauma of all sorts, abuse of all sorts, including spiritual, religious, sexual violence towards children, physical violence towards children, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, all of these things. When you torture people, when you make an environment, when you create an environment where you withhold information, you control information, you have high control patriarchal groups, no matter what group it is and what label they go by, this is what they do. And far too often, dominant culture society actually enables that. They have created this environment, this narrative about what it means to be Amish. The peaceful, gentle people who make furniture and good bread. They're conscientious objectors. They would never go to war or commit any violent acts. There's literally legislation governing our bodies as if we were incapable of making any medical decisions. And yet my Amish mother taught me to use abortifacients to prevent pregnancy when she knew I was being repetitively raped as a child. So why is it okay to have some form of personhood and bodily autonomy when it works for your agenda to protect the perpetrators of sexual violence, to keep women and children subjugated to your will and to control what access to information they have? Because I truly believe that when people have better access to information, like Maya Angelou says, they will eventually change. We have to change collectively as a society. We have to change how we look at trauma survivors. We have to stop infantilizing people who have experienced trauma. We don't know what it's like to live with the trauma that other people have experienced. What we do know is that we can have empathy for that experience. What we also know is that we can work to change our legislation. We can write our legislators. We can vote. Our vote holds power, and we have the right to use that. And we need to actually step up and demand action collectively. And when that happens, we will have better communities. We will have safer communities for our future generations. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. So I think Lisa hit it on the head, where we kind of have a society that allows this. Like, it's like they expect women to have these experiences. Like, this is normal for a woman to be sexually assaulted, or, you know, like Mary was saying, her mom knew she was being sexually abused and, you know, raped. And it was kind of like, it's a normal thing. Like, okay, have this tea, so, you know, it's all good, you know? So, you know, I don't know what you, so we already know who you are, Wendy. So Naomi, you can introduce yourself, and then let's just have this conversation where, you know, would the Equal Rights Amendment kind of, in my mind, I see it as like, well, it's like Marianne was saying earlier, you know, we have an emotional, psychic, and I don't remember what else she said, but also the legal aspect. We have to attack it from all ends. You know, we can't just put legislation in place and then everything's going to be perfect, but let's at least get that legislation in place. But anyways, Naomi, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Wendy or Naomi, go ahead and, you know, say what you want to say in response to Lisa and Mary.
Thanks, Katrina, and thank you, Mary and Lisa, for sharing your stories. I'm definitely going to be looking your books up, and I appreciate you, you know, advocating for survivors with your story. My name is Naomi. I use she, her pronouns. I am a attorney and a policy associate at the ERA project at the Center for Gender and Sexuality Law at Columbia Law School, which is a law and policy think tank that is all about the federal and state equal rights amendments, which I will get back to state equal rights amendments and strategies for finalizing the ERA, which they talked about in earlier panels, but also talking more generally about what that would mean for the cause of gender justice more broadly, and defining gender equality in a modern and intersectional and substantive way. And I think that's the only way that we can, you know, address gender-based violence properly in this country, is to treat it as a form of sex discrimination, as Mary said, as a symptom of, or as a driver of, the patriarchy and enforcer of. I think something that we need to understand about our country is that it was built on patriarchy as a principle, in addition to racism. And we have the oldest constitution in the world that is still in use. And when we hear from the Supreme Court that they are looking to our nation's history and traditions to decide whether or not a law or a policy is constitutional, what they mean is that they're digging into these practices that have been supported and condoned or tolerated by our legal system. So we see gender-based violence as something that's been not just, you know, something that occurs despite or outside of the legal system, but something that exists, you know, in 2024, in part because it's 100% tolerated, because of the stereotypes that Lisa and Mary have talked about the normalization and the trivialization that our society and our legal system treat gender-based violence with. We also know that it's a form of sex discrimination because it disproportionately impacts women and gender minorities. And I think this is something that, you know, it seems very obvious in the feminist movement and from just the basic facts, but it's not reflected in our law. And that, you know, to have the Equal Rights Amendment establish that baseline of sex equality in the Constitution, and, you know, ensure that sex discrimination is not tolerated by the government is an important step to making sure that issues of gender-based violence and the rights of survivors are not considered second rate to things like Second Amendment gun rights or freedom of speech rights, which we've seen come up in certain Supreme Court cases, and some of the most important cases about gender-based violence come right here out of Colorado, which is where I'm from, and happy to talk about that. But I want to turn over to Wendy. But I will also just say that we have in Colorado, which is, I'm in New York presently, but I'm from Colorado originally. Something to think about is in the 1972, when Congress approved the federal ERA, Coloradoans ratified a state ERA. A lot of people don't think about how their states have a constitution as well. I think as we're looking at things like Project 2025, which are pushing for traditional family values, which we all know means pushing for these patriarchal values that subjugate women to a subservient role, that we need to be looking at states' rights if we are to face a federal government that continues to strip away our fundamental rights at the federal level. So if there are, Colorado organizers or folks in other states who want to talk about strategies for, implementing their state equal rights amendments and all the amazing policies that we could base on sex equality and ensuring that we're talking about gender-based violence as a sex discrimination issue that is completely related to everything else that has to do with sex inequality, from economic inequality to restrictions on reproductive autonomy. Anything that takes control out of our hands and makes us less able to leave really unsafe and vulnerable situations like the ones described today are also forms of sex discrimination. And so I'll leave it at that, and would love to continue this conversation here or elsewhere, because it's such an important one to have.
Thank you. And before we go, is someone typing? I keep hearing like a feedback. If you're typing during this, just mute yourself, so then we won't hear you type. Otherwise, I'm not gonna you're not in trouble. Just mute yourself. Okay, go ahead, Wendy.
Of all the sounds, right? Oh, I think we. Is everybody not here?
Oh,
Naomi?
Did Naomi leave?
I think we lost Naomi.
Kelly,
Lisa.
Oh, there she is.
Lisa.
There's Kelly.
Lisa's gone. Yeah.
Did Naomi just pop
No, I have
off?
Lisa and Mary. It's okay. I just didn't not want to start without her.
Oh, okay,
And
there
here
she is.
She's back.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So I have a lot to say, and then we don't have a lot of time, but I want to respond to Lisa and Mary. Your stories, I mean, I don't know if you could see me when you were speaking, but I was like nodding. I've been doing this work for so long. I don't want to say this to make it sound like, and I really understand your situation, because I certainly don't. But I've heard so many stories like yours, and they're not just similar in terms of what you've been through. They're similar in terms of the woman, you, feeling like, what the hell? How is there nothing happening to help me? That hopelessness, the sense of betrayal, I mean, that is caused by our Constitution, which affords you nothing, guarantees you nothing by way of protection from what you went through. So here's an interesting observation I want to make. And Lisa, I was like wanting to find you and send this to you even before you were done. I wrote a piece a couple of years ago, and I would love to send it to you, on behalf of incarcerated women who kill. And my argument was, women kill when they feel hopeless, desperate, and like there are no other options. And they're forced into that relative vigilantism state by our government, by our laws, by our Constitution. So my paper argues that every woman incarcerated for killing or hurting because of what hopelessness she developed as a woman, including being traumatized, but even maybe not, right? Maybe just because you lived in an abusive and violent home for so long and you kept calling the police and nobody would ever show up, or you'd get to the courthouse door and they'd let him out. I mean, when you get to the desperate point where you have nothing to turn to, no one to turn to, because you have learned firsthand that your government has no interest in actually enforcing the laws on your behalf, in actually making sure you are equally protected from any harm. And the reason the government is doing nothing is because it can. Why do women get abused with impunity? Why are women disproportionately victimized by violence, abuse, rape, trafficking? Why? Because they can be abused at disproportionately high rates. Why? Because the Constitution allows it. This is why the ERA is so profoundly important to the safety of women, to women being able to live in peace, walk out the front door without fear of being attacked and abused. Without the ERA and the Constitution, women must live in fear because the Constitution requires that they live in fear, because it doesn't offer protection from anything that's causing her that fear. Women are in prison for killing abusers because the legal system that is supposed to enforce laws equally on her behalf didn't have to, because you can't hold the government accountable for letting you be raped, systematically trafficked, abused, beaten. The legal system doesn't have to protect you from any of those things because you are a woman. It may, all of our government officials who are supposed to do that protection, for which we pay enormous taxes, they may, under the Constitution, allow you to suffer disproportionately high rates of harm, including femicide, because the Constitution allows it. I mean, it really is that simple. And I don't know if that gives you comfort or rage or a little bit of both to know, but I feel very strongly that if women knew that the reason they developed that sense of hopelessness is because of the Constitution, maybe they would turn their energy into activism and not violence against the man who's about to kill them. If you felt like there was an explanation for your desperation, you might actually channel your energy, especially Lisa. I could read when I was 3 as well, too. I was like hugging you through the screen. You were so bright. And why that got derailed was your government's fault. Yes, there were people around you who bore some of the responsibility, but they got permission from your government. And true for you, Mary, as well, although you know the Amish communities have insulation, sort of like Native American communities do. They have some insulation from harm. Go ahead.
Can I ask you this, Wendy?
Yeah.
Why did the government legitimately exchange child labor trafficking for Amish communities in lieu of a high school education with Wisconsin versus Yoder? Why?
Well, if you ask me why religions create justification for harm, we could talk for hours. If you ask me why, I mean, there's so many ways that institutions are set up and designed to not only allow harm to women, but make sure women become acclimated to the norm of that. So, you know, whether it's in the K-12 system where in schools, girls learn that the harm they suffer is less bad than the harm other people suffer, because when they suffer harm because they're female, no one does anything about it. But when other people suffer harm because of who they are, all sorts of stuff happens, right? The school has gatherings, the auditorium puts people together, they talk about it. When girls get abused, and I'm talking about from kindergarten all the way through high school, and of course also in college and beyond, the message is clear. You shouldn't even bother to report it because nothing's going to happen. Nobody's going to treat you like you are a member of a class of people that is suffering because of your class. We just have never honored women in that way. And you know why? Because the Constitution doesn't require it. And one of the reasons I always refer to women as a class, women as a class, women as a class, is because there's enormous literature in the academy and elsewhere and in our laws that refuses to put women in that sentence. Everybody else can be a class of people, but not women. Why? Because we would politically mobilize, rise up, and take over the world if we understood that we are common. Our commonality is our femaleness. We might also have differences, And, you know, intersectionality recognizes that we're not all the same kind of female, but the top priority of our sameness is our femaleness. Femaleness is a reason to bond. It is a reason to bond first and foremost because we suffer because of our femaleness. And so when people are told, well, don't center your femaleness, don't prioritize your femaleness, we have to be able to say back to that, don't you tell me what to center. I'll tell you what I want to center. I'm suffering as a woman. And maybe I have some other things too, but I am suffering as a woman. And, you know, even Shirley Chisholm famously said when she was running for Congress way back when, she said, I've had far more suffering as a woman than as a Black person. And that kind of, you know, fizzled because people didn't want to hear that back then. Women have always been subjugated, not just to men, but to all other existing classes. And we get divided within ourselves. And we're very polite. We don't like to say, really, I think we should make femaleness a thing because somebody might take offense. We have to stop worrying about people taking offense. It doesn't mean that we're right to say femaleness matters. It means it's okay to say femaleness matters because you're saying it in the context of pointing out the suffering women endure because they are female. So rising up as females to address that suffering that is sex-based is okay. It may not be the most important thing we do, and I would certainly never require a woman to center her sex-based suffering, but it's okay to center your sex-based suffering and to come together as a sex class while also recognizing that there are other ways people suffer. You know, nobody would ever say to Black Lives Matter or the Asian community or the Jewish community, stop talking only about being Jewish. We recognize there are things that Jewish people endure because they're Jewish or Muslim or whatever. And we don't say, come on, stop centering your suffering because you got other things going on. We say, we all are a community of humans, and there are ways that we suffer uniquely because we are fill in the blank, Black, white, female, Jewish, whatever. So I wanted to emphasize the fact that it's okay to recognize that the reason Mary and Lisa suffered was because they were female primarily. And I also want to emphasize that the solution may not be the ERA, but we have zero hope without it. That to me is the most important message. And by the way, I just want to say this quickly because Naomi brought it up, and we've got a Colorado focus. Colorado did ratify the ERA right away in 72 when it passed Congress. They also have their own constitution where they recognize, of course, women's equality. Here's the problem with Colorado, and anyone from Colorado who's on tonight, never forget this. Colorado's state constitution, like the federal constitution, gives women only intermediate scrutiny, which is to say, under state constitutional law in Colorado, just like the crappy American Constitution, federally speaking, they bump women down to second-class status because under intermediate scrutiny, which is the problem with the 14th Amendment, all government officials can treat women differently and worse because harm to women is allowed to be addressed under weaker standards in the courts than the standards that apply to other people. So it's a crappy second-class standard in the federal constitution. It's a crappy second-class standard in the Colorado constitution, but it's hard to see because if you just read the Colorado constitution, just like the Utah constitution, if you just read the language of the constitution, even Texas, these constitutions, as a matter of state law, say all people are equal, including based on sex. But, and it's a really important but, why does the federal ERA matter so much? Because if the federal ERA were in the Constitution, it would be illegal for state courts to use intermediate scrutiny when enforcing their state constitutions. So let's not get lost on state constitutions. You can spend the next 10 years passing a state constitution in whatever state. We all have, I mean, most of them have them, a couple don't. But let's say you spend the next 10 years complaining about a state that doesn't have a state constitution in terms of guaranteeing women equality, right? Let's say you go to some state, and I know there are a few where women don't have a constitutional equality under the state constitution. You spend 10 years fighting for it and you finally get it. You won nothing because the courts can then apply, enforce, and interpret that state constitutional guarantee of sex equality to treat women as unequal because there's no guarantee of equal treatment under the state constitution until you have a guarantee of equal treatment under the federal constitution. So please, I mean, all due respect, Naomi, please, let's not waste time on state constitutions. They're not going to work without the foothold in a federal guarantee of full equality.
I could talk to you all night, but we're like 4 minutes over our time, so I have to wrap it up. But before we go off, I want to thank all of you. You're all fascinating. But so the next segment, we'll be talking to different ERA groups that are working to advance the ERA. But before we get off, I was going to ask you, Naomi, is there any way for people to get involved with the ERA project, or is that specific to Columbia Law, like students and, you know, your state and whatnot?
No, it's definitely not. It's a national project. And I just want to say, you know, just so people have as many tools in their pocket as possible, you know, absolutely. Do we need the federal ERA? Do we need to be defining what that, you know, equality standard looks like now so that we're ready to make those arguments? Yes, one of the places they'll look is at state court decisions in the states. And we've got some really good ones coming out of Pennsylvania and Nevada around abortion rights. And the other piece is that Section 2 of the federal Constitution talks about Congress, empowering Congress to pass legislation to address sex inequality. And so I think it's really, really important to start imagining the sorts of policies that we want Congress to pass. The same thing goes for state constitutions. What do we want, aside from litigation in courts that most of us can't afford? What do we want our states to implement? What do we want our mayors and our governors and our secretaries of state and our state legislatures and, you know, our, county commissioners to be doing to make sure that we're addressing these really important issues, including gender-based violence? And the list is endless. So we've just come out with a model policy agenda that we'll be publishing this month. That is for states either that are working on a state ERA or that already have one, so that we can all start strategizing. And I would love to share it with anyone on this call. You can definitely get involved. We have a lot of different opportunities, and we work, with a lot of different communities. I'll be in Nevada next month to talk about their ERA that they just passed in 2022. That is the most expansive in the country and includes, a diverse array of classes of protection, and really excited about that work and would love to talk to folks about it.
Okay, thank you. So again, I don't mean to be rude, but we're like 6-7 minutes after. So thank you all for coming. I'll see Lisa soon. I'll probably see Mary soon. They are both Coloradans as well. I guess, yeah, there are lots of Coloradans in this call, but I would just recommend to Mary and Lisa, if you do feel a calling towards the ERA, I would listen to some of the other groups that are doing stuff and kind of do some research and see just what you resonate with and maybe get involved with them. So we all need to be doing our part to push the ERA forward. And so that's what I have to say. So thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much, Naomi. And we are going to go into our next segment. Thank you so much. And you're welcome to stay on if you want, or you can just hop off the call. If you stay on, you won't be on the screen, but you can continue watching the speakers. So thank you. Our next segment is about active ERA groups that are working to push the ERA forward, finally finish this. And so Kelly, I saw that Kamala was on. I don't know if Kimberly Beebe and Kate Kinlan Laird is here. Hey, Kate. Hey, Kamala.
Hi.
And Kelly, no offense, Wendy, but we're not going to have you on this segment.
Oh, okay. I thought you were keeping me.
Okay.
We should always keep Wendy. She's a genius. She's our legal counsel for Equal Means Equal.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, this segment was just focusing on, leaders of groups, no offense towards Wendy, but yeah, obviously she can stay. So it looks like Kimberly Beebe from ERA Today didn't show up, but that's okay. So Kate, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing in Minnesota to help push the ERA forward. And, just tell a little bit about your background, like what brought you to the ERA, and, just update us on what you're doing. If we know what you're doing, it might help us do something different where we are as well. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. I'm Kate Quinlan Laird. Use she, her pronouns. I'm the vice president of ERA Minnesota, and we primarily focus on, we work with national partners on the federal ERA, but also we are pretty laser focused this past 2 legislative sessions in trying to get an equal rights amendment in the Minnesota state constitution. We genuinely support any movement, any effort since 2014 to anything that's going to get an equal rights amendment, whether it's federal or in our state. We have came heartbreakingly close this past legislative session in passing what would have been probably the most progressive equal rights amendment in the country, in our state constitution. We passed it both through the Minnesota House and the Senate in the same biennium, but with some language change. It was felt that explicit reproductive language needed to be added. And so, we're confident that we'll get it done in 2025. There's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of regret that it didn't happen. My personal opinion was definitely a Democratic fail. We had the polls, we had the House, we had the Senate. Anyway, so that's kind of where my background I come from.
Oh, thank you so much. Kamala, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us where you are with Final Impact as well. It sounds you were just in Michigan, I think it was, and just tell us what's been going on and what's the progress. And
absolutely.
I also wanted to ask later, I'm curious if you are doing anything with Kamala Harris. Earlier we were talking about we don't know her, what her stance is on it. I guess she used to have a stance, but we don't know up to date where that is. But anyway, start with Equal Means Equal and Final Impact, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So my name is Kamala Lopez, and I am the founder of Equal Means Equal, which was originally called the ERA Education Project and was started in 2008 when I learned that women still did not have equal rights under the U.S. Constitution. And I was shocked and dismayed. And along with 96% of Americans, I believe that men and women should be equal under the law. But as we all know, over 80% of Americans believe that equality is already in the Constitution. And since my background is in film, television, and entertainment, I decided to use those tools, media, the arts, to educate the public. And for many years, I did a lot of research around the Equal Rights Amendment and looked at all the areas in society where sex discrimination has negative impact on women, girls, families, and Americans in general. And I made a film called Equal Means Equal, which was released in 2016 and went on to win Best U.S. documentary at Michael Moore's Film Festival. And I only bring this up to say that Michael Moore had me back last week in Michigan, and we were able to reignite that state and start work on Final Impact for the ERA. So we used the film to get the last 3 states ratified. There was a lot of argument among establishment feminist groups that we should start the ERA over. Congresswoman Maloney had a new bill. Like what Kate was mentioning, there was a lot of discussion about specificity of language, but it was my opinion that we needed to get those last 3 states, in particular because the 27th Amendment had passed relatively recently after 203 years of not being ratified. So it seemed a little odd that women, 51% of the population, were only going to get 7 years. So we went on and we used the film in screenings. We worked with the League of Women Voters, the National Women's Political Caucus, AAUW, Boys and Girls Clubs, so on and so forth, national commissions for the status of women. And we were able to win Illinois, Nevada, and Virginia. And then the amendment was blocked, at which point our genius attorney, Wendy Murphy, who's been on this call the entire time and knew that they weren't going to let it go so easily, filed suit against the government, filed suit really against the U.S. archivists, ordering them to publish the amendment as is mandatorily required. We were in court for several years and we lost on grounds of standing. At the same time, the states of Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia also filed, and they also lost on the grounds of standing. So apparently American women have no standing, whether they're as a group of women or the states that represent them, we have no standing at all. But now, where we are right now is that we have, I believe it is 98 days to make sure that the Equal Rights Amendment is published. And the way that Equal Means Equal believes that we should do this after the past 15 years of really understanding what the political landscape is from the bottom up. Trying to go through political figures is a no-win situation. They are really there to either virtue signal, get votes, get money, but there is no real impetus for them to see women as equal, not only because of the abortion issue or bodily autonomy or the power of the patriarchy, but most importantly, the U.S. government pays women $1.6 trillion less a year, and the corporations, God knows how much that is. So we're up against major capital. We're up against major blockade of our voices. And how do we fight back? Well, we decided to create community activations. And Final Impact for the ERA is something any group can do. It's not owned by Equal Means Equal. We simply facilitate and handle it. If you go to finalimpact.org, you can start your own community action. And what it does is it gives a public face to the message of the need for ERA publication. You get 50 photographs of your community friends and neighbors holding a phone, quizzically saying, please publish the Equal Rights Amendment. And you find a local place, whether it's the front of a movie theater like we did with Michael Moore in Traverse City, or whether it's Freedom Plaza, which we're negotiating now with the city of Washington, D.C., or a library, whatever building in a high traffic zone, and you paste those images, those large images up, and I can share my screen and show you what we're talking about if that's possible. But the idea is for us to make the plea to President Biden to make one 3-minute phone call before November to secure his legacy, because truly it's a win-win for Biden. He has absolutely nothing to lose. He's a lame duck. He will thereby get at least a 10-point bump for the Democrats if he does publish the Equal Rights Amendment, and he will go down in history as having provided human and civil rights to more than half the population. He'll be a real hero. So that's the Final Impact campaign. May I show you our
Yes, please show what you have. And I'm kind of curious how it's going right now too. And I just spoke with my friend Nathalia here. She leads a women's coalition here, and maybe we can team up and do some Final Impact here. But we'd have to talk about schedules.
Let us do it. So here, I hope you can see the website. This is finalimpact.org. And the goal is, it's a time-sensitive campaign designed to urge the federal government to publish the ERA. And you go to submit your photo, and you can either, if you don't want to do your own action, you can just take a picture of yourself with a phone. This is part of the Inside Out project, which was created by the French artist JR, and it's all over the world. and you just put your name, your email address, you click that you're allowing us to use your picture, and you upload your image. But more importantly, you can create a group action. You can create a group action here. And what you'll do is you'll answer a few questions. You'll get a phone call from the Inside Out Project, and they will explain to you how to execute your campaign. So far, we have done New York City. We've done Traverse City. We just got the go-ahead from the city of West Hollywood to do their library. And huge news is that we did get the 6th Street Bridge in Los Angeles, which is a $500 million renovated bridge that connects downtown LA to East LA. And we're going to be able to cover that entire bridge. So if you look at how it works, this is how the rooftop looked in New York City. It's not hugely complex. It basically involves wheat paste, which is non-toxic and easy to remove, buckets, brooms, and a little elbow grease, and it's up there. And you add the message, publish the Equal Rights Amendment, and you leave it up till November. We believe strongly that the U.S. government is going to react when they see this happening. We have 15 activations, potentially 15 happening in Michigan, additional ones in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Florida and Ohio. And I think that it's critical that we focus on battleground states, although if you're not in a battleground state, by all means do it nonetheless. The more they see us moving on this, the less likely that they can ignore it. And it's very inexpensive. It really is true grassroots, and it allows the faces of the community to be seen as well, to support equality. And it's exciting. You know, we got over 500 and something people participate at LA Pride. They were just jacked up about it. And then they see their big, huge posters and they look cool. And, you know, so it's also fun. It's bonding. It's actionable, right? And as far as what we're doing, we're in Washington, D.C. We're in conversations with the mayor's office. We hope to secure either the Women's History Museum, the African American History Museum, but ideally Freedom Plaza to cover. And we're doing a large event on Women's Equality Day in D.C. We would love any and all of you to please come. And what we're going to do is gather portraits there at that event, as well as speakers and music. It's an 1,100 person venue that we have. And we're going to make sure, and we're also going to the DNC. We're also going to do this in Chicago in just a few weeks. We need help with that. We already have the location. We have the portraits, insurance, installation. We are looking for funding because we need to cover the cost of the equipment and various other printing costs and so forth. So if anybody could donate to that, we'd be greatly appreciative at equalmeansequal.org or at finalimpact.org. And if you would like to create your own community action, and it seems difficult, or finalimpact.org is too complicated for you, feel free to write to me directly. My name is Kamala. It's hilarious because now everybody knows how to pronounce my name. They know how to write my name. I am running for president and I will take on Donald Trump. No, just kidding. But you can write to me at Kamala@equalmeansequal.org and I would be happy to help you.
Thank you so much, Kamala. And Kelly, would you mind bringing up Natalia? Okay, no, there she is. So before I talk to you, Natalia, I wanted to ask you, Kate, do you think ERA Minnesota would possibly do a final impact action where you are?
It's very possible. You know, we're an all volunteer organization. We're small, but it's definitely sounds like something that we could do before November. I will. We'd had it on our radar, so I'll go back to the group and definitely make a case for that. I did want to say, when you introduced me, you asked me how I got into this work, and I hadn't answered that, but it was directly from seeing Equal Means Equal. And I went to a screening of it, and I came out so mad and so, and with nowhere to go, I just wanted to talk to everybody or talk to, various people. I'm like, how is this even possible? And so then we partnered with ERA Minnesota then, before I was involved with them, and did another screening, but did it with breakout sessions. We had, local experts on a whole host of things that were brought up in the film to talk to people, so that you had somewhere to go to kind of talk through the issues that were discussed in the film. So anyway, I have you, Kamala, for getting me directly involved in doing active equal rights work.
That's great.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Nathalia lives in my city, and I was texting her in the chat, and she's potentially interested in collaborating with me so we can do a final impact here. So Kate, we'll do one in Colorado if you'll do one in Minnesota. And, like Kamala was saying, it's probably a little more, it's better if you're in a battleground state, but I think that if we show unity all across the states, regardless if we're a battleground state, I think that strengthens the movement, So, so Nathalia, I think you pretty much heard what Kamala was saying. We would basically be taking pictures of people with a phone. Does it have to be with a phone, or can it just, like, what are the instructions?
Well, the point is to get people we're trying to get Biden to make 1 3-minute phone call. So if people pick up the phone, we're also providing them with the number to call the White House and say, hey, Biden, pick up the phone. I think it's also more curious if people are like, why is everybody holding a phone? And we can put a little QR code on the wall to direct them to learn more about it. Okay. So, and then the slogan that we would use is make the call, equality for all, publish the Equal Rights Amendment. And we're not saying publish the ERA, because in a lot of research that we did, people did not know what that was, unfortunately. Yeah. So we kind of have to say Equal Rights Amendment.
So I want to ask you something, Kamala. So once an action turns in their photos, how long does it take for them to come in? So we get a timeline of, like, okay, when do we need to do this? I'm kind of trying to strategize here, since we have you right
absolutely
here.
So there are 2 ways to go. If you do it through the Inside Out project and you send the pictures to them to print out, it takes a couple of weeks for them to mail them back to you, and they charge you for them.
Okay. How much?
It's a sliding scale depending on what you can afford, because they're also a 501c3. So you make your case. The maximum is $20 per poster, and they're 3 feet by 54 inches.
Okay.
That's the maximum and includes shipping. But you can also, and this is great to do, is find a local printer and give them the business and say, look, we want to pay $5 a poster. Can you help? Like we're doing in LA, because we are going to have thousands and to cover the bridge or the library. We're talking about 2,000-3,000 pictures. We can't afford $20 a picture. Right. So you can, and the other thing is then you don't have to wait as long. As soon as you take the picture, you can either get the dotted background, download the dotted background, and I can send it to you, and put that up behind the people on the phone. Then you don't have to do any Photoshop or anything. Then your picture's done. You just have to make sure they've signed a release. You print them out, which can take, each picture that big takes about 5 minutes to run through the printer. So you don't want to make it like too close to the moment. But the actual install is very fast. We did New York in 2 hours, and we had over 200 portraits there. The thing that seems to be most difficult for people right now is finding the location, because you don't want it to be a pop-up. You don't want to do all that work and then they're like, okay, take it down tomorrow. We want it up there visible, so it's working, so it's educating, so people are walking by, and we want it in a high traffic area. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the main street downtown. It could be on a wall that is seen when people drive by it a lot. Like there are walls off the freeway, the backs of things. Like in Traverse City, we did the front of the State Theater, but now we're going to do the whole back of the State Theater, which you can see whenever you drive down the highway.
And can I just offer one suggestion, Cam, too? I don't know if you've thought of this or if it's even possible, but I've represented women who've been abused or families of women who've been killed. And we have gotten billboard companies to donate space for 3 months at a time related to gathering evidence or making people aware. I wonder if we could get some of these billboard companies to donate that space on a highway just for a few months.
We've been trying, Wendy, but they're very capitalistic. Oh, there's a sort of a there's only like 3 or 4 companies now that own all of the billboards. It's Outfront Media, Clear Channel, and one other one. And, they will kind of, but like, for instance, in Chicago, what they've offered us is if we can give them a budget of maybe $5,000 to geo-target people that are going in and out of the convention, meaning if your phone walks through that area, anytime you open your phone, our ad's going to come out and it's going to say publish the ERA. That's $1 gets you 9,000 impressions, which is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
If we can get the money for that, then they're going to give us free random billboards on their digital spaces, bus stops, and so forth. So but the idea of them giving you a free billboard when they can get $15,000 to $20,000 for that per month is very slim.
Yeah.
But if anybody knows anybody that does have that or that can sponsor a billboard, billboards are great, but it's just hard.
The one other thing I want to say, because I know we're going to run out of time, but I totally love this project and I love Cam for coming up with it. And it's just wonderful. I also am very happy to play hardball with the Democrats and start saying, which I think people can do if they can't manage to do any of this final impact stuff, just find a way to say to the Democrats by letter, by email, by phone call, by, radar pigeon. I don't care how you do it, but say to Kamala Harris's people and the Democratic Party, if Biden doesn't publish the ERA before Election Day, I will not vote blue. We've got to play hardball. We can't be wishy-washy because the Democrats think women are going to vote blue no matter what. And this is all just, very nice activism, but they can totally get away with ignoring us. We have to be a little bit more aggressive and say, no, you're going to lose if Biden doesn't do this. You're going to lose. I will vote for Mickey Mouse before I'll vote for Kamala Harris if Biden doesn't do the right thing. That's how I feel. I'm not saying this isn't an important project. It obviously is for a lot of reasons. But I'm done. I'm done not playing hardball. And I'm ready to make, threats, extortion, whatever you want to call it. That's my style.
Nice, Wendy. So I know we're going to jump off soon, but I wanted to kind of do a little strategy here on record with Natalia. So Natalia, if you want this next month, so let's say we'll get back in touch in like September 1st, just randomly. If you want to start taking pictures of people with phones, I'll work on securing a space. I mean, does that sound, would you be able to do that?
Yeah, because I can get the other women in the coalition too to like help out with that. And we can
that's what I thought.
Work around the city and get some people to get some pictures in. So yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, so
and
that'll
just
be
there a standard release.
Constitution Day is September 17th. So Constitution Day is September 17th. So if you can't make the August 26th, which is Women's Equality Day, shoot for the September 17th.
Someone's ringing.
Sorry.
Is there a release form on the website?
Yes.
Like a standard boilerplate?
Yes, but if you write to me, I will send you the background that you have to print out and the 2 release forms. And then there's one for people that are under 18, because in Traverse City, we had a lot of young girls that wanted to step up for this, and so
Yeah,
they
I
have
wanted to ask that
time.
too. So kids under 18, they have to sign a release form. Is that what you're
Their
saying?
parents have to
Parents.
also
Okay.
sign.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, Nathalia. What else should Nathalia keep in mind? So you have to have a certain background. Is that what you're saying?
You don't have to, but if we want to show some sort of
Mhm.
community
Continuity.
action, we should keep that background. Also, the language should remain the same ideally, which is we want to print out, publish the Equal Rights Amendment, make the call. And then
Well,
the
is
name,
that added later though? Isn't that added later?
yeah,
the
yeah. I mean,
language?
it's
Okay.
added. Yeah, when you glue it up, you want to
Okay,
print
yeah,
out those words
so
too.
Natalia, you just have to worry about taking pictures the next
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
At the last week of August, I'll get in touch with you and we'll share progress. So I'll be working on securing a space. You get pictures, and if you have any question, tomorrow, either later tonight or tomorrow, I'll email. Actually, Kamala, can you tell her the email, not the email address, the website, so she can learn more? Oh no, that's your email address, the Final Impact website. Okay, there you go. So check that out, and just keep in touch if you need. Otherwise, you'll have your little mission. I'll have my mission, and we'll check back in at the last week of August and see how things are going. Okay.
That sounds great. Yeah, I've also got a printer, so we can do the local printing. So I'll
Okay.
get in touch with them and see what I can work out with them.